I'm the director of Science Gallery International, which manages a network of universities, and these are our current 7 members. And all these universities develop a space called a Science Gallery, where they use science and art to engage the public, mostly adults or young adults, with the challenges of science and technology. So they do this with collaborations between science and artists, exhibitions, programs, and it's also a way for the university to engage a very, very high number of public that otherwise would not be in contact with the university. So in Dublin and London, for instance, there are about 300, 400,000 people every day who visit Science Gallery. And this brings a lot of ideas, challenges, questions to the researchers and the students that are involved in these programs. And so I'll show you a few examples of the work that has been shown in Science Gallery, and especially, as Maria Ernest has said, we've been working with the World Economic Forum in the past years, and the work that I'm going to show was also part of an ongoing process that we are involved to look at the human values in technology. And this has been done indeed through different venues and platforms of the forum. And before I show you these examples, I'd like to present 2 statements that come from the book on the Fourth Industrial Revolution by Klaus Schwab, which I find very interesting, and I'm sure they will also be challenging and probably provoke a little bit of discomfort. But the first one is this one, is indeed that we face the task of understanding and governing 21st century technologies with a 20th century mindset and 19th century institutions. And I think this is actually the situation. Institutions, and especially universities, are very solid, but they can also be slow in changing and adapting. And the development of technology is so fast that it is even challenging for ourselves as humans really to keep up with that. And the second statement is also quite could be quite controversial, but I think it is something again that we cannot ignore. And is this one, that all technologies are political, in the sense that technologies, when and while they are developed, contain a whole set of assumptions, values, principles that we as humans bring into the technology while we develop them. And these in turn affect society, power structure, status, etc. And the reason why I show you these statements is that actually when we think about communication, as you know, one of the important part of the relationship between science and society is trust in science. And there have been recent studies, both in Europe and worldwide, that show that there is a very, very strong link between trust in science and trust in government. Which means that even if we as scientific institutions are not and should not be involved probably in the politics in the conventional sense, there is a link and there is a relationship that we cannot ignore. And I think this is important to keep in mind. Now, I'll show you some of the examples of how indeed the relationship between science and art can help to uncover and unpack and discuss implications of that technology. The first one comes from a research which the main research is Pedro Lopez, and the short video will show what it is about. It's basically electrical muscle stimulation. So
okay, I feel like it doesn't want me to touch the water. Not at all. Maybe I should need to grab the hand. Yeah, I think I need to grab the hand.
So what?
It's not cool to grab the thing, but the handle is okay, no matter how I grab it.
I'm not going to grab it until I touch the tunnel.
So this is a really extremely interesting technology that allows indeed to help people to move and perform in ways that are safe, that can be used for rehabilitation. So it allows to give properties basically to objects and make them safe. It has been used indeed for rehabilitation after traumatic episodes. However, the researcher is also an artist, so he uses the same technology to develop this artwork, which is called ad infinitum. And the artwork uses the very same principle. So it invites a person to sit at a table and insert their hand into this device. And the moment the arm is there is locked, and then those sensors will force the person to move the handle and generate electricity. So the machine basically feeds on the human, and there is no way to leave. So this technology transforms users from people from users of technology to being used by technology. So the person is there, and she can't do anything. Literally, she's forced to use and to generate electricity. Luckily, somebody else comes around and, intrigued by this technology, sits down and then does the same because it looks interesting. So he puts his arm inside, and yes, he's locked down. He can't move. He has to generate electricity, but this actually released the other person, so she can leave. And the machine basically goes on forever. So it's like a parasitic entity that lives off humans. So this is indeed a way to interpret and show actually how the technology that we saw before and that was so hopeful can actually have this very, very dark and dystopian use. The great thing about Science Gallery is that, that it is, when you put it in a public space, these are the reactions of people.
I really like this one just here. That was like a parasite robot.
It was really weird. You just had to keep moving your hand to not feel any kind of electric shock. I lost all control. Like, it was so weird.
It uses our muscle power to generate electricity by cranking this crank.
So,
This reversal of the idea that we are always using machines. There's a lot of technologies that we have that actually enforce a lot of control.
So, and indeed, this was, for instance, installed at the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution in San Francisco to really inspire this kind of questioning. And again, it is not to give answers, but really to open up a serious thinking about where and how and at what point we discuss technology in this way. The interesting thing is also that when you show this to a wide public, like in Science Gallery, the first reaction is very emotional, and sometimes people really take it, they laugh at this, and then they realize, well, actually there is also a dark side of this that we should actually talk and discuss. But being involved in engaged in an emotional way allows also a very, very complete way, I would say, to talk about technology, not only based on fear or on hopes. The other interesting project is this one is called Stranger Vision by Hector Dewey Harcourt. And again, the short video will tell you what she does.
You may want to think twice the next time you spit out your gum or drop a cigarette butt in public. New York artist Heather Dewey Harcourt might pick it up, extract the DNA, and turn it into a 3D face that could look like you.
While we're looking into the question, in this particular case, the question was, what can I learn about someone from a single parent?
Once she finds a sample, she takes it to the lab to mine it for DNA and analyze the results.
From a cigarette butt, I can learn where some of the ancestors likely came from, their gender, eye color, hair color, complexion.
The information is fed into a computer program that generates a 3D model of a face.
The way that I'm using code here is a lot like how a sketch artist would use a pencil.
It takes about 8 hours to print in 3D at NYU's Advanced Media Studio. Then the excess powder is removed to reveal the disembodied face from a stranger's DNA. But there are limitations, like the length of a person's nose or shape of their face cannot be determined.
So faces have a general likeness that might look like a family resemblance. Right now, I can't determine age, so all of my masks are aged between 20 and 40.
Dewey Hagborn started the project called Stranger Visions after creating her self-portrait 2 years ago. Now she's hoping it will raise questions about genetic privacy.
It's meant to be an exploration at the intersection of art and technology and science, and it's meant to be a publication.
So her project indeed, as you know, we are not there yet in terms of all this, but we might soon. And her project is really to raise those conversations in time for before these technologies are widely adopted. How far and what in time means, you can decide after looking at this movie. So here we are, where indeed what we saw as an art project, actually a few years later, a city creates a project where you don't have any identity anymore, you don't have privacy. If you litter the streets, you will be recognized, named, and shamed. And basically, now also with face recognition, and this can go even further. So again, the value of working at the interface between art and science is really to have conversations before these things happen, because when they happen, it's probably too late. And also to understand really the full extent of what we are talking about. Finally, a small but really lovely project is this one, and this is actually about artificial intelligence, and this was also shown indeed at the center of the World Economic Forum. And this is really a kind of ironic kind of alert system about the potential of artificial intelligence. This was done actually a few years ago, and for a while actually artificial intelligence was always said, well, the creativity is the one aspect and one skill of humans that will not be replaced by artificial intelligence. A few years ago, that was actually quite common to read that. I read it now less and less and less. Actually, there are also projects that show that artificial intelligence has aspects of something that we could call creativity. However, this was in an old, fashion camera that was fitted with a image recognition sensor and connected to a neural network. And so, what the camera does is take a picture and then write a poem based on the interpretation of the picture, based on a huge database of poems and other things. And it's just very, very poetic, because it shows that it is, of course, a kind of ironic way of looking at artificial intelligence as a creative tool. But if you read those poems, you wouldn't know if they where they come from, if they come from a engine or from humans. And again, it is a simple but very good reminder of the way we should be thinking about these technologies. This is a quote from Andrew Maynard from the University of Arizona that it's very important for us to remind especially when we talk about public communication, is that people don't work on intellectual discourse, but on narratives, on emotions, on feeling and empathy. And therefore, art can be really a good way to mediate between tensions. And the goal is not to reach the endpoint. The art and science will not give us a answer to ethical questions, but it will be able to prepare us much better to understand what those questions are, and especially to avoid something that's very common now, that is indeed a polarization of yes and no, left or right, and therefore this is indeed a very good to keep in mind. What I like to frame the art and science collaboration is that really it uncovers the emotional response to technology, and that is really essential when we talk about public communication, but also essential when we talk about the future impacts of the technology, because that's the only way to be prepared for the potential consequences of the technology. And so to conclude, a few thoughts that maybe we can address later. One is that the point of no return is the fact that more and more often for researchers and developers in labs and technology, they hit indeed a kind of point of no return when a technology is shaped and will have consequences earlier and earlier. So it's not possible anymore to kind of offload that responsibility to somebody else. It's not like, well, some other body will be responsible to regulate that. Also, the moment the technology is developed, it has a potential, and we should be aware of that. I was listening recently to a conversation in Dalian in China about living to 150 years, and it was really fascinating because maybe we're not there yet in terms of having the technology and the developments to allow people to live healthy until 150. But there are serious questions about is that meaningful? Should we really do it? Because it's not an easy issue, and there are people saying that is going to disrupt completely the narratives of human life in terms of generations. So what if we develop something that can lead us in that way? That is a question that needs to be addressed at that moment, not later. Also, these kind of artistic investigations really make us comfortable with the unknown, with ways to use and to deploy technologies that are still unknown and that may or may not happen. That's not the point, but it's really to become comfortable with dealing with what we are creating. And also to remain both hopeful, because that's absolutely essential, and alert. And that is indeed a very positive and healthy way to develop technology. Have indeed a creative approach to complexity. The issues, both technical, ethical, and legal, are becoming more and more complex, and so a creative approach is necessary in order to avoid indeed to be stuck with the 19th century institutions and move forward. Humility is also something that is very important, and art and science is also a way to remind us of remain humble in the things that we don't know, and indeed that space between the unknown and the humility to acknowledge that is very important. And as I said, these are not kind of science fiction scenarios. They are not predicting the future at all, but they are very important to let us know today how we look at the future. And that's my contribution. I'm happy to take questions and to discuss later. Thank you.